Hey, I'm live. All right. Well, I don't know what happened earlier. I was trying to use OBS and it didn't work. Apparently, the streams got crossed or something. I don't know if this is Ghostbusters, but apparently it is. So I'm back on the webcam. I was hoping to use my really nice mic. You see this mic here? The one that I want to be using. I can't use that mic with the browser. So I was trying to use OBS. Didn't work. So here we are. At least I am live streaming and you can hear me. That's usually a good sign. So, hey everyone, welcome to the Daily Check-In. I'm Ned Bellavance, Ned1313 on Twitter. This is a 10-minute live stream, and I plan to do this daily at about 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Apparently, when I scheduled it today, I scheduled it for Pacific Time, so I'm going to have to delete that one. But I think that's what happened and why my live stream through OBS didn't work the way I wanted to. So today's topic is get a hobby. That sounds strange, but what I'm saying is that you need a hobby that exists outside of your work life. We talk about work-life balance. That's something that you hear a lot, but then people just kind of wave that off like, yeah, you do some work stuff and then you do some life stuff. And what's that life? Well, if that life is really just an extension of your work, it's not going to be very fulfilling. And if you're like me or a lot of other people I know, you love your work. You love what you do. I personally work in technology. I create content for Pluralsight and other websites. I do analysis of technology, and I get to just like play around with technology as part of my day job. That's awesome. I love it. I would probably do it even if I wasn't getting paid, but that does not make it a hobby. A hobby is a completely separate thing. So when I say a hobby, how is that different from work? Hobby is not work. Hobby is not work related. If I was building a lab using this server that I have over next to me as a hobby, that's not a hobby, okay? That is still very work related. It's still in the work lane. I don't have that separation there. Another thing about a hobby is you're not getting paid to do it. If you're getting paid to do it, that has become a side hustle or whatever you want to call it. It's not a hobby anymore. So it's not that. It's also not something you're looking to get paid to do. So you don't have this grand design in your head, like I started this hobby and then I'm going to monetize it and make, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. That's not the point of the hobby. So if that's not what a hobby is, what is a hobby and why should you have one? Well, a hobby can be just about anything, and in particular, it should not be work related. So just to, give an example of a couple hobbies that I have, I go out running. Running is one of my hobbies. It has some benefits, health related, but I actually just enjoy it. I don't make any money off of it. Obviously, it costs me a lot more money than I would ever make off of it. But running is a hobby, and it's not work related. I am not doing technology when I'm running. Another one is baking bread. Same sort of deal. Like, I like baking bread. It's something that I picked up in the last few months. Somebody gave me a sourdough starter, and that just started a train of me making bread. A previous hobby I had was brewing beer at home. Home brewing, you might even call it. That was very similar to baking bread in the sense that you're using yeast and you have to get the proportions right. But beer involves an open flame a lot of the time, and it's a more hands-on and time-intensive process, whereas bread was less time-intensive. So it is a hobby, but it's not something I'm getting paid to do. I'm not trying to get paid for it, and it has nothing to do with my current work situation. So that is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a hobby. Why do you need a hobby? Like, if you are thinking about picking up one, and you probably are, given the current situation, why would you do a hobby? Well, one is stress relief. You're not focused on work. And that's kind of the whole point of the hobby, is to give you something fun and interesting to do and let your mind relax and stop thinking about work or personal issues that you're going through at the moment and just kind of focus on a task that you find enjoyable. So stress relief is a huge part of that. Another big part of it, I would say, is perspective. When you take a step away from your work or take a step away from your personal life, you're gaining a sense of perspective. That perspective is good in a number of different ways, but I think most importantly is if you are having a problem at work or you are having a problem in your personal life, taking a step back from that and gaining a little larger perspective on the world lets you see something that maybe you wouldn't have seen before, a way to solve that problem. I know that happens from a technical perspective a lot. When I'm stuck on a difficult problem, the best thing I can do is go for a run or go stand in the shower for a while. And that is when my mind relaxes and it thinks about something in a different way. So perspective is huge. Another thing is random skills. I know I said hobbies, you're not doing them to get paid, but you are learning weird skill sets that could be applicable in your day-to-day job, especially as that job morphs and evolves. So a good example of that is I used to run a podcast purely for fun. So I didn't do it to appease anyone. It was a music podcast. I wasn't trying to make money out of it. I just really, really like listening to music, and I like sharing that music with other people. Now I run a podcast that I get paid to do, or at least sometimes get paid to do, Day 2 Cloud. And the skills that I learned about audio production and putting a podcast together and doing interviews and all that kind of stuff, those were all skills that ended up being applicable to a paid thing, but that wasn't the point of it. It happened to be that those skills were transferable. So getting a hobby gives you some random skills. Another thing that getting a hobby does is it gives you a chance for social interaction, maybe. And that's not all hobbies. Like baking bread does not make me more social. But if I went to a bread meetup, or if I went online and talked to other people who also enjoy a passion for baking bread, now I'm part of a community. And more importantly, that community is separate from my tech community. I'm now in 2 different communities. I may meet people in the bread community that filter back into my tech life in the sense that, oh yeah, we have this shared interest in, oh, you also do tech stuff? Oh, that's cool, I do too. Maybe that morphs into an opportunity, but maybe it just gives you an opportunity to talk to people about something that is not work related, which is kind of the point. It also gives you something to talk about when you're trying to make small talk with other people. I am not the greatest at small talk. I am probably a little too pragmatic for that. I tend to just talk to people about things that are important. And if I don't need anything, or there's nothing particular that we need to talk about to get something resolved, I run out of gas pretty quickly. It's one of the reasons that I don't talk on the phone very much, especially to friends and family, because I view the phone as something very pragmatic. So having a hobby gives you something to talk about outside of just work, because just talking about work all the time can get very boring for the person that you're talking to, and it makes you seem like less than a whole person. So that's all the benefits of a hobby. I probably don't need to sell it too hard, but that's why I would get a hobby. Why shouldn't you monetize it? That's a question that comes up. And I will say, you shouldn't never monetize your hobby. There are some times where people started with a hobby they weren't expecting to make money off of, and then the opportunity came up. I know a gentleman who started a home brewing experiment, and he was a salesperson for a really good value-added reseller. He continued to be a salesperson for many years, but his home brewing really took off. Like, people kept telling him, you should sell this. And eventually he decided to start selling his beer. And now all he does is run the brewery, and he's quit his day job. That can happen. Don't expect that to happen. Don't go into a hobby with that idea. One, it's going to add stress to a hobby. And the whole point of your hobby is to relieve that stress. So definitely don't get into it for that, because it's going to just add a level of stress when you're constantly thinking about, how am I going to monetize this? Am I doing it, properly? It's also going to change your interactions with the community. That whole getting out, getting social, or staying in, being social. If you're in the back of the mind always trying to think about how you're going to monetize this, it's going to taint the interactions that you have with the community at large, because you're looking at it from a pure business perspective, and you're missing sort of the joy. And that's the other thing, is it can kind of ruin the joy that you had from doing that hobby in the first place. So I know a lot of us are now stuck indoors, or mostly indoors. The hobbies that you could adopt right now are a little bit smaller in size, what you could do, in part because it's difficult to get the things you might need to start a hobby, and also in part because you're indoors and pretty solitary. But there are some hobbies you can start. Knitting, for instance. You could do crossword puzzles. If you wanted to take that on, you can print out crossword puzzles or do them online. You could learn more about 18th century classic French literature if you want. There's a ton of hobbies that you can pick up that don't involve going outside. So think about something that interests you or could potentially interest you and just pursue that as a hobby. If it doesn't take after a few days, that's fine. Move on to something else. The whole point is to take you away from your normal workaday kind of stuff and put you in a frame of mind that's different to gain perspective, relieve some of that stress, and maybe gain some random useful skills in the process. So that's everything I have for today. Thank you so much if you decided to tune in, or if you're watching this after the fact. Please subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be trying to do this every day, and hopefully I can get OBS working tomorrow. We'll see how that goes after this. And really, if you want to join in the live chat next time, I highly recommend throwing some questions at me because I'd love to answer them. That's it for me. Everybody stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.